I woke up that morning the way I always did, before the sun, before the birds, before the world had a chance to disappoint anyone. 71 years old, and I still couldn't sleep past 5. Old habits, I suppose. 40 years of getting up early to open the hardware store will do that to a man, even a decade after you've sold the business and handed the keys to someone else. But that morning was different. That morning, I had somewhere to be. My granddaughter Emma was turning 6, and after 7 long months of phone calls that got shorter and visits that kept getting postponed, I was finally going to see her. 7 months. I know that doesn't sound like much to some people, but when you're my age, 7 months feels like you're gambling with time you might not have left. Every night for those 7 months, I'd lie awake and think about her laugh, worried I was starting to forget the exact sound of it. My son Michael had always been the quiet type, even as a boy, but lately his calls had gotten shorter still, his excuses thinner. Work's been crazy, Dad. We'll come visit soon, Dad. Soon never came. I told myself it was just life. Kids grow up, they get busy, they build their own worlds, and sometimes there isn't room left over for the old man. I'd made my peace with that a long time ago, or at least I thought I had. But Emma was different. Emma was the one thing that could still make my chest feel full instead of hollow. Last time I'd seen her, she'd drawn me a picture of a lighthouse. I used to tell her bedtime stories about a lighthouse keeper who kept ships safe, and she'd written "My Grandpa" underneath it in crooked purple crayon letters. Prouder of that lighthouse than any artist has ever been of anything. I kept that drawing on my refrigerator. I looked at it every single day. The invitation for her birthday party came by text, not by phone call, which stung a little more than I let myself admit. Michael sent me an address I didn't recognize. And play. A new house, apparently nice neighborhood, he said. Good schools. I didn't ask why nobody had mentioned moving. I didn't ask why my own son hadn't called to tell me himself. I just told myself he was busy, that this was probably a good sign. A house meant stability, meant they were doing well. I chose to be happy about it, instead of hurt. For weeks, I thought about what to bring her. In the end, I decided on something that mattered more to me than anything money could buy my late wife Carol's wedding ring. The simple gold band she'd worn for 38 years until the day she passed. I'd kept it in a small wooden box in my dresser drawer ever since, unable to look at it most days, unable to give it away either. But Emma was turning 6, and someday she'd be a woman, and I wanted her to have something of her grandmother's, something real, something that had actually meant something long before that someday arrived. I had it resized down to a pendant so she could wear it now, close to her heart, and grow into the rest of the story later. The morning of the party, I put on my good blue shirt, the one Emma always said made my eyes look like the ocean. I stood in front of the mirror longer than a man my age has any business doing, straightening my collar, running a comb through what's left of my hair. I felt lighter than I had in months. I felt, for the first time in a long while, like a man with somewhere to belong. The drive took 40 minutes. The house, when I found it, was bigger than I expected, a stone and timber place with a wraparound porch, balloons tied along the fence posts, the low hum of laughter and music drifting from the backyard. I sat in my truck for a moment, just taking it in, my hands still on the wheel, my heart doing something it hadn't done in years, racing, not from fear, but from joy. I walked around back, and the yard opened up in front of me like something out of a magazine. There had to be 80, maybe 90 people scattered across the lawn, more than I expected for a 6-year-old's birthday. But I supposed that was just how things were done these days, especially by my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. She'd always had a taste for the grand gesture, the kind of woman who wanted every occasion photographed for people who weren't even there. I never said anything about it. The based of one. It wasn't my house, wasn't my money, wasn't my place. I scanned the crowd for my son first. I found him near the drink table, laughing with some men in polo shirts, and something about the way he was standing, shoulders tight, eyes darting toward the house every few seconds, made me pause. But I told myself it was nothing. Hosting a party will put anyone on edge. Then I heard it, that laugh, that impossible, beautiful laugh that I'd been aching to hear for 7 months. I turned, and there she was, Emma, in a yellow sundress, a crown of paper flowers slightly crooked on her head, chasing a boy around the base of a bounce house with her whole small body thrown into it. My eyes went hot before I even realized I was crying. All those months, all that silence, all that worry, It evaporated in an instant. She looked up. She saw me. Grandpa. The sound cracked across that whole backyard like a bell. She dropped everything and ran, arms flung wide, dress flying behind her, and I dropped to one knee right there on the grass to catch her, my arms already open, my whole chest aching with a joy I hadn't let myself feel in far too long. And that's when it happened. A woman I didn't recognize, tall, sharp-featured, dressed like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, came storming across the lawn before Emma ever reached me. I had half a second to register the fury on her face before she shoved me, both hands, square in the chest, so hard I went backward off my heel and crashed into a folding table loaded with party favors. My hip hit first, then my shoulder, plastic cups, and wrapped candy scattering across the grass. My glasses skidded somewhere I couldn't see. The whole yard went silent. I heard Emma scream, not in delight this time, but in pure childhood terror. "Grandpa!" I lay there stunned, blinking up at a blurred sky, trying to understand what had just happened to me. The woman stood over me, chest heaving, finger jabbing down at my face. "Stay away from her," she snarled. "Stay away from my daughter, you disgusting old man." I didn't even know her name. I want to tell you I stayed calm. I want to tell you that 71 years of trying to be a decent, patient man held firm in that moment. But something broke loose in me that I didn't know still existed. I had never in my life raised my voice at a woman, never mind my hand. I had taught Michael that a real man never needs to. But lying there in the grass, in front of my son, in front of my granddaughter, in front of nearly 100 strangers, with my hips screaming and my dignity in pieces on the lawn, something primal took over. I got to my feet before I'd even decided to, and when she reached down again, grabbing at my collar like she meant to shove me a second time, my hand moved on its own. The slap landed clean across her cheek, the sound of it cracking through that silent yard like a rifle shot. She staggered back, hand flying to her face, eyes wide with a shock that mirrored my own. "How dare you put your hands on me?" I said, my voice shaking, but steady enough for every person in that yard to hear. "I don't even know your name." That's when Vanessa came sprinting across the lawn, and I understood, in one sick lurch of my stomach, exactly who this stranger was. "Mom!" Vanessa shouted. "Oh my God, are you okay?" "Mom!" I looked at Michael, my son, standing there, frozen, his face the color of old paper. He hadn't moved an inch this entire time. "Dad," he finally said, barely above a whisper, "that's Vanessa's mother, that's Diane." I had never met her, 7 months apart from my own granddaughter, and I had never once even been told my son's mother-in-law existed, let alone met her, let alone been assaulted by her at a birthday party in front of half the neighborhood. Diane was clutching her cheek, tears already streaming, real or performed, I honestly couldn't tell, and pointing at me like I was some kind of criminal. "He hit me. Everyone saw it, he hit me. I want him arrested." Arrested. But something in the crowd had shifted. I could feel it, the way you feel a change in weather before it arrives. People had seen the shove. The groats? People had seen me go down over a table full of party favors. An old man knocked flat at his own granddaughter's birthday. Whatever performance Diane was attempting now, it wasn't landing the way she wanted it to. She pushed him first, a woman near the fence said quietly, but not quietly enough. I saw the whole thing. Diane's eyes darted around, searching for allies, finding fewer than she expected. I didn't say anything else. Not yet. I bent down, found my glasses miraculously unbroken in the grass, and put them back on with hands that were shaking harder than I wanted anyone to see. Then I looked for Emma. She was curled up against the side of the house, knees to her chest, sobbing in a way that broke something in me all over again, worse than the shove, worse than the humiliation. I walked over slowly, lowered myself down beside her, wincing at the ache already blooming in my hip. "Hey now," I said softly. "Hey, sweetheart, it's all right. Why did Grandma Diane hurt you?" she asked between hiccuping sobs. "I don't understand." I don't either, baby," I said, and I meant it, "but I promise you it's not your fault. Not one bit of it. Possible." I held her there for a long moment, feeling her small body shake against mine, and something inside me went cold and clear and calm. Whatever confusion I'd walked into that yard with was gone. What replaced it wasn't rage anymore. It was resolve. I stood up, my hip aching, and I looked around for Michael. Get her out of my sight, I said, nodding toward Diane, who was still theatrically dabbing at a cheek that wasn't even red anymore. And then you and I are going to talk. All of us. Right now. Dad, please, Michael started. Can we not do this here? We're already doing this here, I said. She made sure of that. Vanessa stepped forward, arms crossed, chin lifted with the kind of defiance I recognized instantly, because I'd seen it in her mother's face 30 seconds earlier. You attacked my mother. In front of my daughter. On her birthday. I don't care what she did. You don't put your hands on a woman. Nuppendate. She put her hands on me first, I said. In front of the same little girl. She was protecting Emma. Protecting her from what? I asked. I'm her grandfather. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. For just a second, just 1 second, I saw something flicker across her face that looked almost like guilt. That's when I understood there was more to this than a stranger's misplaced rage. I didn't know what it was yet, but I intended to find out. I turned to Michael. How long has Diane been living with you? The color drained further from his face, which told me everything before he even answered. 4 months, he said quietly, and, quote, 4 months. Since around the same time his calls had gotten shorter. Since around the same time the visits had dried up entirely. And you didn't think to mention that to me? Not once? And, it's complicated, Dad? It's not complicated, I said. It's disrespectful. I am your father. I raised you. I have called this family every single week for 7 months and been told you're too busy, and this whole time there's been a woman living under your roof telling my own granddaughter to stay away from me. Diane, still nursing her performance from a few feet away, scoffed loudly enough for the whole yard to hear. Maybe if you'd been a better father, your son wouldn't need better influences in his life. The crowd had gone dead silent again, waiting to see what an old man knocked to the ground 20 minutes earlier was going to do next. I didn't shout. I didn't move toward her. I'd already used up the only violence I had in me for one lifetime, and I wasn't proud of it, not even a little. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't call the police. I called Harold. Harold had been my attorney for going on 30 years, since back when I was fighting a supplier lawsuit that nearly sank my hardware store before it ever got off the ground. He'd handled my will, my trust, the paperwork on every piece of property I'd ever bought, including, as it happened, the house standing behind me. He answered on the second ring. Harold, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need you to email Michael the property file. Today. Now, if you can manage it. Everything all right? He asked. No, I said, but it's about to be. I hung up and looked at my son. Michael, check your email in about 10 minutes. What are you talking about? Vanessa demanded. What property file? I didn't answer her. I walked instead to a folding chair someone had abandoned near the cake table and sat down, my hip throbbing, and I waited. Around me, the party guests had clustered into uneasy little groups, pretending to make small talk while stealing glances in our direction. The music had never come back on. Somebody had quietly ushered Emma inside with a cousin, which I was grateful for, though it broke my heart a little that a 6-year-old already understood she should be shielded from what was happening to the adults around her. 10 minutes later, Michael's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands, and I watched his face change as he read. Dad? He said slowly. This says you own this house. I do, I said. I have since the year you two got engaged. I bought it as insurance, Michael, and because I wanted you to have something stable no matter what happened with your marriage, no matter what happened with your business, no matter what. I put it in a trust in my name so nobody, not a bad business deal, not a bad decade, not anybody could ever take it out from under you and my granddaughter. You've been paying me what you thought was a mortgage every month. It's rent. I've been putting every dollar of it straight into a college fund for Emma. The color that drained from Vanessa's face this time was total. That's not, you can't just signed papers. You signed a lease, I said. I had Harold word it carefully. Ask him yourself. This is insane. Diane snapped. You're telling me you've secretly owned this whole time and never said anything? I'm telling you, I said, looking directly at her now, that I built a safety net under my son's life 8 years ago, long before you moved in and started telling my granddaughter to stay away from her own grandfather. And I think it's time we talked about why you did that. Vanessa's composure cracked for the first time since I'd arrived. Mom, don't what? I asked. Don't ask why a grandmother I've never met is living in my son's house telling my granddaughter I'm dangerous. I think that's a fair question, don't you, Michael? It's a. My son wouldn't look at either of us. Vanessa, I said, gentler now, because whatever anger I still had, it wasn't really aimed at her, not entirely. Why does your mother hate me so much she'd attack a man she's never met? The silence stretched long enough that I thought she wouldn't answer at all. Then, quietly, staring at the grass, she thinks Michael only married me because of your money. She's been saying for years that you'd try to control us through it. She didn't want you around Emma because she was scared you'd use her as leverage to control us. I felt something in my chest cave in, not with anger this time, but with a grief so specific it nearly took my breath away. 7 months without my granddaughter. 7 months of shortened phone calls and thin excuses. Not because my son had drifted, the way children sometimes do, but because a woman I'd never even met had convinced my family that I was a threat. I bought that house because I love you, I said to Michael, my voice cracking now, all the anger gone out of it. Not to control you, to protect you. There's a difference, son, and I think somewhere along the way, somebody made you forget it. Michael's eyes were wet. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have called you. I should have asked you myself instead of just listening. 1. Yes, I said simply. You should have. Diane tried one more time, her voice sharp with the last of her defiance. This doesn't change what he did. He hit me. I want him arrested. I looked at her for a long moment, this stranger who'd knocked me to the ground at my own granddaughter's birthday party, over a fear she'd invented and nurtured for years without ever once picking up a phone to find out if it was true. Call the police, I said. I'll wait right here. And when they arrive, we can discuss the 11 witnesses who watched you assault a 71-year-old man from behind before he ever laid a hand on you. Nobody moved to make a call. I stood, wincing at my hip, and I walked to find Emma, who was peeking around the doorframe from inside the house, her eyes red-rimmed and afraid. I knelt down slowly, ignoring the ache, and opened my arms, and she ran into them the way she had at the start of this whole miserable, beautiful day. Is everyone still mad? She whispered against my shoulder. No, sweetheart, I said, and I meant it, or at least I was determined to make it true. Everybody's just figuring some things out. Grown-up things. It's not your job to worry about it. 1. I reached into my pocket and took out the small wooden box I'd carried in all morning, and I placed the pendant, my Carol's ring reshaped into something a little girl could wear close to her heart, gently around her neck. This was your great-grandmother's. I told her. She was the kindest woman I ever knew. She never knew, and I want you to have a piece of her with you, always, so you remember that our family, the real parts of it, the parts built on love instead of fear, that part is stronger than any bad day. She looked down at the small gold ring resting against her yellow dress, and she smiled through the last of her tears. It's beautiful, Grandpa. So are you, I said. The party didn't resume that day. The guests filtered out quietly, murmuring their goodbyes, some of them stopping to squeeze my shoulder or shake my hand on their way to the driveway. Diane left with a face like a slammed door, muttering that she'd be speaking to a lawyer of her own, though Harold assured me later that week there was nothing to speak about. Vanessa stayed, sitting on the porch steps long after everyone had gone, staring at nothing, looking, for the first time since I'd arrived, like a young woman who'd been carrying somebody else's fear for far too long and finally set it down. Michael and I sat together in the backyard as the sun went down, surrounded by deflated balloons and a birthday cake nobody had eaten, and for a while, neither of us said anything at all. I let her convince me you were the enemy, he finally said. I don't know how I let that happen. Grief makes people vulnerable to the wrong voices, I said. I lost your mother, and for a while I let my own anger talk louder than my sense too. You're allowed to have been wrong, son. What matters is what you do about it now. I want Emma to know her grandfather, he said. Really know him, not just birthdays. Then let's start there, I said. It's been almost a year now. Diane doesn't come around anymore. Vanessa asked her to give them some space, and, to her credit, my daughter-in-law has worked harder than I expected to rebuild the trust. Her own mother spent years tearing down. Michael calls every Sunday now, sometimes just to talk about nothing at all, which is its own kind of miracle after 7 months of silence. And Emma, my Emma, she still wears that little gold ring on a chain. And every night before bed, she asks me to tell her the lighthouse story one more time. Last week she asked me, out of nowhere, why Grandma Diane pushed me that day. I told her the truth, the way I've learned to tell her most things. Now, sometimes people are so afraid of losing what they love, I said, that they attack the people who never meant to take it in the first place. Fear makes liars out of people who might otherwise have been kind. And the only thing that ever really fixes it is the truth spoken plainly and stood behind, no matter how much it costs you in the moment. She thought about that for a long while, the way 6-year-olds do when they're turning something over that's a little too big for them yet. I'm glad you're not scared of the truth, Grandpa, she finally said. I spent 70 years learning not to be, I told her. It's the only kind of strength that lasts. And,